My nightmare.
Hello everyone, Grim here, and as you can tell, it's time for me to read you another story. This one is titled A Late Date, written by the user Funky Mike 32 and posted to the subreddit r/nosleep. So as always, sit back, relax, and enjoy. And there I was, waiting for a girl that would most certainly not show up. She was late, 2 hours late to be precise. She was one of my favorite co-workers at our job. Her name was Olivia, and I had only built up the courage to ask her out yesterday. To my surprise, she quickly accepted my invite, and I was happy that she was giving me a chance, especially after 2 years of being just friends. Olivia only agreed on going out with me if she was the one deciding where we would have our dinner. However, I must say that the choice for the place was rather interesting. The front door was shut and I had to enter from a shady back door. For whatever reason, there were barely any customers inside except for an old couple and 2 lonely guys. The strong smell was probably due to the huge amount of cheap incense that were burning near the balcony. I sat down at a small table waiting for Olivia. I checked my phone about 10 times, but the last message she had sent me was from 6 hours ago, saying, "I can't wait to see you." Well, at least she didn't reject my invite. That would be a lot worse, wouldn't it? I was just about to leave, preparing myself to pay for the 2 glasses of beer I had to drink, when suddenly she showed up. Her dress was absolutely astonishing. I've never seen her being dressed up like that. My heart could barely stand it, and neither could my mind. She was gorgeous. She sat down, apologizing for the wait. She told me she had an issue with her dress. It was almost like a silly excuse, but I didn't bother asking about it. I was just happy she was there. We talked for a while and shared lots of dreams and ambitions. She told me how she would like to become an entrepreneur and start a business of her own. And so did I. We were getting along. Just before I started talking about my family, the waiter came with menu in hand. Olivia had quite an interesting and eccentric taste, at the very least for food, especially meat. While I had ordered a random meal and an expensive wine, waiting for her to pick the same, she just smiled at me and said to the waiter very calmly, "I want the specialty of the house, please." I didn't want to be rude, so I quickly changed my request and ordered the same as the lady. What I found odd was the menu didn't mention any special order, but, well, I like surprises. What could even go wrong? After 10 minutes, the food came. The taste was, as I had mentioned previously, very eccentric. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't good. It was different. I had never eaten anything like it before. Sometimes it seemed too sweet, especially for the piece of meat. But I ate most of it. I didn't want to ruin our first date by being rude to her. We spent a long time talking about how she was planning to move to a bigger house and change her lifestyle a bit. I loved the attitude. Then once we were finished, we left the restaurant. I paid the bill. Let me just say, it wasn't cheap. And we got in my car, and I drove her home. While I was driving, she wouldn't stop talking about how she enjoyed being with me and how beautiful the sky was during the night. I was feeling amazing. Suddenly, absolutely out of nowhere, she leaned over for what I expected to be in my ear, but a gentle kiss on the neck was what I received. I was so scared and very nervous, but I kept driving without even answering, besides smiling a little bit. She then said very calmly, "I know a spot in the woods. Mind driving there instead?" I thought like any other guy would in my situation. I instantly agreed and drove her to the place that she asked me to go. I thought I was getting lucky. I pulled my car over in a very shady looking part of the road made completely of dirt. Once I had stopped, she told me to drive a little longer. "There should be a small cabin around here," she said. I was simply following instructions. I drove for a little longer until I found said cabin. She told me to turn off the car and the lights and wait there, just for 5 minutes. Then she would be ready for me. I did as she asked me to. Meanwhile, I was checking my pockets to find the proper protection that I was going to need. Whilst doing so, I dropped my phone by accident. I picked it up and I saw her message. It was a message from Olivia, but I had no signal in the middle of the woods, so I could only assume it was a text that she had sent me before the evening or during our dinner. It reads as follows: "I'm sorry I couldn't show up today, Jay. My brother had an accident. We're still at the hospital. I hope you don't get mad at me. We can still go out next week, right?" Needless to say, I drove the hell out of there without even looking back. So, I have an update. I might have found out a little bit more about Olivia and what happened, even though I'm not sure it was worth it. If you haven't listened to the first part of this story, I recommend for context that you start there. I woke up breathing very heavily. It was the 4th time this night. What happened yesterday was absolutely terrifying. It was perfectly reasonable for me to act this way. I rapidly got up and checked the locks once again. I was fine. I was safe. At least that's what I was trying to tell myself. But deep down I knew I could never be sure about that. No matter how many times I checked the door and windows, or how many times I checked to see if the kitchen knife was still there, right by my side, I didn't know anything. I was defenseless. I was afraid that I was going crazy. There was absolutely no way I wasn't. An exact replica of Olivia. The only possible and reasonable explanation would be if she had a psychotic twin lost at birth. But wouldn't that really be crazier? I had to call her, but I was afraid she would think I'm insane. What if this was all just a bad dream after all? A very realistic nightmare. No, it wouldn't be possible. In fact, the second time I got up, I checked the fuel gauge of my car. It did have less fuel in it than before, so I had used the car. It was real, at least the driving part of it. I was waiting for the sun to rise before I left to meet Olivia. I would feel safer that way. Since I didn't want to freak her out, I just texted her the following instead of calling her. I'm sorry about your brother, but something weird happened. We need to talk in person. I'm not sure if I should text you this. Can we meet at your place? To my surprise, she read the message almost instantly, as if she was waiting for my response. Something very weird happened too. I agree. We have to talk. Come meet me at 8 a.m. I should be home by then, she replied. I was left speechless. What could possibly be happening? Was she in danger? Were we in danger? I started to panic. I was really nervous. Now that things were starting to work out for me, this happens. In fact, I was so nervous that my body started itching, especially my neck. I waited with the knife in my hand. My head was starting to shut down, and eventually it all became dark. I fell asleep. When I woke up, it was already 7 a.m. Fortunately for me, I was still pretty much well alive. I checked the phone, no new messages, so I rushed to the car and drove to her place. I couldn't afford to sleep more than I had already slept. My body was feeling weaker and weaker as time went by. I could only relate it to the fact I barely had slept out of pure terror. My hand was shaking and the entirety of my body was sweating. I felt like I was slowly passing out again, but I couldn't. I had to be stronger than my urge to sleep. The adrenaline I was feeling at that moment was the only thing keeping me awake. I had to be awake. I drove as fast as I could, and finally I arrived. 5 minutes early. I checked the front door. It was left open as if she wanted me to come in without making too much noise, and so I did. Even though it was very suspicious, I knew I hadn't many options anyway. It was worth the risk. The house was very charming. I still remember every single detail from the last time I had been there for her birthday. Olivia is a very funny, welcoming and attractive person, but she isn't very social. She lives with her brother and her older father. Barely any friends. None that I have ever met. She dedicates an immense amount of time to working in the office, just like I do. That pretty much explains why we get along. I admire her. Even if she is antisocial like me, at least she makes me happy, and besides that, the number of friends in your friend circle doesn't define you. Does it? I was looking for Olivia, but I couldn't find her. I was starting to get anxious. Was she really here? Just before I headed to the kitchen, preparing myself to shout her name, thinking I had come here too early, I heard her voice. She was calling me from downstairs. Was she inside the basement? It almost felt like a trap, but I wasn't that stupid. I picked up one of the sharpest knives in the kitchen and followed the voice. If it was the replica, I was ready to fight for my life. I had to protect Olivia and myself from this creature. Crack, crack. The wooden stairs were making a lot of noise. Each noise was louder and louder. Now that I come to think about this, I don't remember having a basement the last time I came to her house. Once I turned on the lights, I stopped hearing her voice. She was suddenly silent. It was dead silent. As if that wasn't creepy enough, the basement door slammed shut. I heard footsteps outside, and suddenly I could hear sobbing. "Olivia, is everything alright?" I shouted. My neck was now itching even more. The skin was slowly peeling off. What the hell was happening here? The last thing I heard was, "I'm sorry. My sister is hungry. I just love my sister too much." Then something hit my head. It's hard as steel, even though I'm not sure what could have hurt me that much. I dropped on the floor, and even if I wish to tell you more about what happened, I wouldn't be able to tell anything. I can't remember anything else besides the pain I was left with. The feeling of dread, solitude. The only flash of memory I have is this intense laughing that was happening inside my own head. It was as if whatever hit me had access to it. I woke up in my house completely undamaged. The back of my head, nothing. Whatever hit me didn't leave any marks. I was completely naked. I quickly rushed to the mirror, and the only thing I was left with, besides despair, was a faceless figure. I could barely distinguish my facial features. There was a nose and a mouth, and if I tried even harder, I could also notice eyes. But all separate. I couldn't recognize my own face. I couldn't see it. I started crying, but I could not tell exactly why. I picked up the phone and looked at my pictures. I couldn't recognize any faces, friends, family, people I just knew. None of them were recognizable. None except for her face. I felt alone, and yet somehow I knew I wasn't. At least, not anymore. I looked at my phone once again to check the clock. My stomach was empty. Now, is it time for dinner? And yet again, we are faced with another amazing tale. Now, I have to come clean here. I cheated a little bit with this one. It was initially 2 stories, but the first one was a little bit too short for my liking, and I couldn't put the book down, so I decided to read both as one. If you liked today's narration and you would like to hear more, please like and subscribe. Feel free to turn on the notification bell and do all of the other things that I suppose you're supposed to do. But outside of all of that, I have a little bit of a further thank you, I suppose. I have to thank each and every one of you for coming along on this journey with me. Now, by the time this video is released, I'm probably only going to have about 430 odd subscribers, but I just wanted to touch a little bit more onto the plan with the thank you video. Now, there's going to be 2 outcomes for this. Either my thank you has been completed and I've already released it, so it doesn't matter, or I'm still waiting for a couple of voices and it'll be out in the next time. My idea, however, is to get it to you as soon as possible. I don't like thank yous that are mainly just the narrator thanking people. I've done a couple. They just don't fit like me. So I've decided for this case I'm going to do a massive collaboration with some of my friends, some of my great friends in the horror community, and a couple of special guests. Now, if you've already heard this recording, then you'll understand where I'm coming from. But if you haven't, please wait. Turn on that notification, wait for it to come through. I promise you it'll be at least something to fall asleep to. Well, anyway, I've talked for way too long now, so I'll stop. As usual, be safe wherever you are, and have yourself a good night or day. And this is Grim, signing off.